everybody. Welcome to Two Out the First. It is a lovely Friday afternoon. It is March 14th, 2025. I'm Ryan Ballich. Hope you're enjoying the players. We've got a good show for you today. We got plenty to talk about. We've got some weird incidents this week in the world of golf. Some of the players, with Rory McIlroy taking Heckler's phone and the weird story behind that. We've got Bubba Watson saying that the major championships, quote, need LIV golf for promotion or rounding out the field. It's an interesting take, as usual, from Bubba Watson. Then we'll talk a little bit at the end of the show about the sixth hole at TPC Sawgrass, story behind replacing the tree that Pete Dye had left there 40 years ago. And now that it's back with Davis Love III, it'll be a different tree and player reaction, all of that. So first, let's start with a quick shout out to our friends at Swannies. Check them out, swannies.co. Use the promo code GolfNewsNet25 and save 25% on your first order. It's getting to be springtime. The thaw is here in the DC area. It's very nice to have good golf weather again. And Swannies has got you covered with all of that apparel that's just in between summer and winter. So check them out at swannies.co. All right. Rory McIlroy took a heckler's phone in a practice round earlier in the week of the Players' Championship on Tuesday. He was playing the 18th hole. One of the, if not the most difficult hole in the golf course, one of the most difficult holes on the golf course. And water all up the left, as you probably know if you're watching this. And there was a couple of kids, the back left of the tee box, where you can stand and watch some of the players hit. And as, I guess, around when McIlroy's hitting, one of the two kids heckles McIlroy and says, just like the 2011 Masters, where, he hooked it left on 10, and that was kind of what started the beset of the poor back nine that cost him the tournament. One of the Masters I attended and covered. It's a moment that will live with me forever. The walk from the 18th green into the locker room that day, that evening, with his girlfriend Holly in tow, and obviously Holly didn't go to be his wife, but anyway, kind of heartbreaking, defining moment of his early career. And then 6 months, a year late, whatever. Not even 6 months later, he's the Masters champ, or the U.S. Open champion, wins by 8, and starts a run, right? But the heckling must have gotten to McIlroy, because after the tee shots are hit and the group clears out, he knows what's been said. He knows where it's been said. He goes back left to these two kids. He asks for the one kid's phone, takes the phone. Looks like, from what you can tell, I don't want to necessarily put actions into what McIlroy did, but it sure looks like he was going to try and find the video that this kid was probably taking of the incident and delete it. And it turns out that the kid involved is a University of Texas golfer who's an up-and-coming player, just won in a collegiate event basically across the street at Sawgrass Country Club, had come over to check out the tournament, and he and his friend wind up heckling the four-time major champion, getting under his skin. And then he has to go and write letters of apology, tries to apologize to McIlroy, apologize to the tour, apologize to the University of Texas community, the golf community, all this different stuff, because he wanted to heckle Rory McIlroy, I guess, and say something stupid. And my whole takeaway from this, I think, is a couple of different things. And I should say that McIlroy was asked about this yesterday, or at least attempted to be asked about it by a couple of different folks, including Shane Ryan from Golf Digest. And McIlroy didn't want to talk about it. And someone, I think, kind of put it to him, hey, can I ask you about, which is one of the, there are a lot of critiques I can offer at times, but one of the worst kind of questions, other than, to start with, other than talk about ... Or one I've noticed more recently is, what's your message to your team? I cannot loathe that question more. It's an empty, stupid question. But the other part is, can I ask you about? Well, for various reasons, you don't want to tell the person exactly what you're going to tell them, or ask for permission to ask them a question. They have appeared in front of you for a reason. They are there to answer your questions. So ask them the question, and then if they don't answer, politely follow up, or however you do that. But someone asked, hey, can I ask you about? And he said, no. And then the guy asked, why? And he said, because I don't want you to ask me about it. And then I believe Shane tried to bring it back up and didn't get anywhere with it. So we really don't have McIlroy's perspective on all of this. But it does seem to be kind of a grating week for McIlroy in terms of how he's talking about the media, talking with the media. I feel that way about Colin Morikawa and Scottie Scheffler, too. They've both been kind of coarse in how they've been dealing with the media so far this week. But for McIlroy, it's an embarrassing incident for everybody, right? Like, if you went to the University of Texas and just won a collegiate tournament and you were riding on cloud nine, I think one of the last things you would do is go to a professional golf tournament and heckle one of your heroes or one of your potential heroes at least as he prepares for a professional golf tournament, one of the biggest in the world. That doesn't sound like a good idea. And it's also equally not as great of an idea for McIlroy, who knows what's going on, right? He knows he's been heckled. He knows he will be heckled at the Ryder Cup. He knows he will be heckled other places in life. To go up to the kid and wind up taking, it looked like it wasn't even the kid's phone. Maybe it was the kid's friend's phone. Take it and get rid of the video, knowing full well that there were 45, 50 other people around on the tee box. A lot of them have their phones out. If you've ever been to a PGA Tour event in this decade or really the last decade, you know that everyone's got a phone out when the stars are there, right? They're recording a shot, I guess, for their personal library so that they can watch it back over and over again and conduct a thorough swing analysis. Otherwise, why would you do it? Because they capture it on TV. But nevertheless, there are 45, 50 people there. A ton of them have cameras out. So even if you deleted the kid's footage, the footage is still going to be there on somebody else's phone. And I promise you it's going to get out. And that's what happened. It got out, right? Created a whole incident of it. The kid being removed from the property for the heckling and all that stuff. And it makes McIlroy look like a bully in a way, look like a lesser guy. And I don't mean that he is the lesser guy, but it makes him look that way because you're going after this kid who just did something dumb, and he should have been scolded for it. And I think he got his proper comeuppance for having to write apology letters and things like that. But if you think about all of the dumb things that you did in your late teens, early 20s, and some of them just flood back into my mind at random times, some of the dumbest stuff I ever did, and that stuff got caught on camera and you were held to account for all of it, you would be writing apology letters for the rest of your life to all of these people. And maybe some of them from prison because of some of the dumb stuff that we did. And it just so happens for this kid, his dumb thing happened in public, was caught by a ton of people, was filmed by a ton of cameras, and involved one of the 5 best golfers on the planet right now, one of the 3 best golfers on the planet right now. I don't think he should have necessarily been made an example of to the extent that McIlroy did it. I think if I were McIlroy, I would have gone back up to the kid and gone, hey, man, like, that's not cool. Don't do that. Why would you do that? Just talk him through it, right? I mean, you saw that was a young person. If that person was a 45-year-old guy with a lot of life experience, then yeah, just go up and be a douche canoe and take the phone, delete it, throw it on the ground, smash it, whatever. That's different. I think that you have a different kind of response to this kid, and it's a kid, versus a full-fledged adult. And that McIlroy didn't really want to talk about it. I think it would have been an opportunity for him to say, yeah, maybe I would have handled it a little bit differently. Here's my message to the kid. I accept your apology. It's unfortunate that it happened. It's unfortunate maybe my reaction to it. We move on. He moves on, and hopefully we're all the better for it. And that's not really kind of how it works out. So now you've got, in a Ryder Cup year, a little bit more fodder for the people who want to show up to Bethpage and just scream at Rory and any European player for the duration of those matches. And they know they can get under his skin really easily. They've got the ammo and the proof on video that it works. And he can't have everyone thrown out of Bethpage. There are way more of them than they are of him. And they're impossible to catch. So he has opened himself up to a massive amount of additional heckling at these team matches that are coming up in the fall. It just seems kind of like a foolish way to respond to all of this. And look, I get being mad about it. I would be mad too. I don't like being heckled. I mean, I'm an online person, right? I make commentary on Twitter or whatever, and people respond and go, well, some guy responded yesterday, so I sent in jest. This is a dumb tweet. It almost always comes from the people who don't follow you because they don't understand the context, they don't know your personality, whatever. But if you've got some kind of public persona and you put it out there and you do that, you are opening yourself up to criticism and harassment and complaint, and you got to acknowledge those things, and you can respond to them however you want. I tend to respond to it with snarkiness back, so that usually works. And sometimes I have outbursts too. I mean, I've told someone on Twitter GFY before, and turns out they stop heckling you if you kind of raise the vulgarity a little bit. Doesn't mean it's a weapon I should employ every time. There's certain situations where it makes sense to me, probably not in general, but makes sense to me. versus other times where it's just like, hey, something more gentle or something joking or smarmy or snarky or whatever, that gets the job done. So assessing a situation by situation, but McIlroy let this one get under his skin. I think that's an unfortunate situation. All right, let's talk a little bit about these comments from Bubba Watson. Well, there's a whole lot of LIV stuff that happened the last couple of days. I tweeted about a couple of pieces of it, either at my account, Ryan Balaji, or our Golf Newsnet account, Golf Newsnet, various social platforms. I want to hone in on what Bubba Watson said ahead of LIV Golf Singapore. First round underway was completed last night. Dustin Johnson, who was DFL last week in Hong Kong, is now in first place, if that tells you how weird golf is in one sense. But Watson was talking before the tournament, and he said, the majors he said majors, quote, need LIV Golf. And there was kind of some confusion around, I think, what he exactly meant by that. He has long said, hey, I want the top 10, 12, 15 LIV Golf players to get in all the majors. They should get in all of it. Our league's great, blah, blah, blah. Put that part to the side. That's been a consistent theme from him. But what he kind of said was the majors need us, and almost kind of insinuating we also need them. We need the majors need us because we're great players, and we need them because it's an opportunity to promote LIV Golf and what they're doing, and that the LIV Golf players can bring additional attention to the majors by being a part of it. And most of that is nonsense, right? The majors are still the majors. There have been a couple of small carve-outs now for the Open Championship and the U.S. Open for LIV Golf players. The PGA and the Masters, which don't do those carve-outs, invite players at their own discretion to add LIV Golf players to the field. And they've done so, and they'll keep doing so for as long as they don't have exemptions. But the idea of having 10 to 15 LIV Golf players in any major championship field just through exemption is craziness. There's just no way that's going to work, because there's so many reasons why. But the interesting idea that the majors and LIV Golf can help one another out, and that LIV Golf can kind of help promote majors and get additional eyes on them, which I think is a farce, but that the majors could help out LIV Golf is an interesting idea, because the majors lend credibility by the exemption categories they make, right? When they added one at the U.S. Open for the top point getter on the Korn Ferry Tour, they're saying the Korn Ferry Tour is a legitimate tour that has players capable of playing the U.S. Open. We've seen the evidence of that through qualifying. We're going to give a special spot to the best player in the Korn Ferry Tour. Now they're lending some credibility, albeit about the same level, to LIV Golf, saying, hey, if you're in the top three and you aren't already exempt, then kudos to you for doing that. You are a U.S. Open caliber player in our mind. But that's not necessarily a promotional thing. They're trying to find the best players in the world that they can have in their field, and for the best of the best, make it easier for them to participate with an exemption. So for Bubba to kind of say, well, they can help support us by helping, we help promote the tournament. That's a weird idea of symbiosis that doesn't exist. The majors are the majors, and they're not going anywhere, and they're not going to change. They're going to be the majors in perpetuity, and we all know they're even more important now in perception, because they're one of the few times we every year get to see some LIV Golf players and PGA Tour, and then throw in DP World Tour, Korn Ferry Tour, and the other tours of the world come together and try to compete against one another, see who's the best, right? The majors don't need to acquiesce to LIV Golf. And then that kind of leads into a couple of different things. So Scott O'Neill, who's the new-ish CEO of LIV Golf, he was speaking at a conference, I think, put on by CNBC. I think it was called Converge Asia. And because I am a business news weirdo, I was reading comments about it. So in the headline stack, okay, golf meets business. Let's read it. And Scott O'Neill's talking about LIV Golf and the value prospect, what the selling point is of LIV Golf. And he says that this notion of LIV Golf is that it's more of a festival, that golf is, who we are, is what the direct quote was. But then to kind of surround that and say that LIV Golf is a festival, and that it's a place you could bring your friends and take a date. And I thought that was kind of a weird way of representing LIV for a couple of different reasons. One, I know of no ban of bringing your friends on a date to a PGA Tour event or an LPGA event or any golf event. You can bring a friend or a date to anything. I'm not recommending that you do that, but you can do that. Those things are there. All these places now have some form of entertainment that's not golf to go along with it, whether it's booze, whether it's food, whether it's a concert, whether it's something else. Every tournament's a little bit different, but they have some appeal to it that is not just golf, right? So the idea that Live Golf's value proposition is we're golf plus some is kind of silly, right? I mean, to their credit, actually, that is kind of expanded out a little bit. But the idea that in this kind of fraught moment for Live Golf, right? They've got multiple top tier players that they spent 9 figures on to get into the door in the first place, and their contracts are starting to come due, and that is coming to focus for a lot of people. And then to kind of put out there, golf is what we are, but we're so much more than that. We're a date night, we're a music festival. How does that sound to Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, Cam Smith, others who are like, well, I'm in the prime. I'm in the prime of my professional golf achievement. Yes, I am playing on this tour because I'm making a boatload of money and I want to win, but I also really care about how I compete in the major championships and what I do to leave a legacy that goes beyond what I do on Live Golf. And then to say, have that mindset and then have your CEO go, well, we're a great date night or a great date afternoon. Those things don't jive very well, I don't think. And then that leads into Brooks Koepka, who was asked pre-tournament in Singapore about the comments from Fred Couples. Brooks is coming back to the PGA Tour. He wants to leave Live and come back and play on the PGA Tour. And what from the horse's mouth, what does that mean? And Brooks does his normal thing. Well, no one asked me. Everyone just kind of has opinions, and no one asked me. Well, that's why we're here, bud. We're asking you the question. And so he gives them a forthright answer and says, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I know that I'm going to fulfill I have a contract obligation. I'm going to fulfill that. And then I don't know. And that part was somewhat telling, right? Like that's not a ringing endorsement to go, well, I have to be here, so I'm going to be here, right? That sounds more like a court hearing than playing professional golf. So that in of itself is not much of a ringing endorsement. And say, I have to fulfill the terms of my contract. And that's true because they can claw back the boatloads of money that they paid you if you don't fulfill the contract, right? You're also beating the snot out of people most times. You're the winningest Live Golf player in their 30-some-odd events they've had. So, yeah, I mean, why stop the money train? However, for him to not say, yeah, I'm looking forward to signing again with Live Golf, different tack, but same in notion as when Bryson responded to this question of saying, basically, I'm committed to this. Well, yeah, the contract terms tell you are committed to it. Otherwise, you lose the money. Second, you're not allowed to disparage Live Golf. They just chose to kind of handle it slightly differently. I'm excited versus I've got an obligation. But the same idea is still there. We are under contract. We can't talk bad about it. We're going to do what we can, and then we'll see what happens when the contract is due. Now, for me, and more of what Brooks said, it really sounded like that obligation goes through this year, the way he kind of put it, where he goes, I'm spending this year trying to focus on the major championships and how to get better at them. And then he said, and how to get this team, smash GC to win. And then we'll figure out what's next. And then we'll do it again next year, whatever that means. So it seems to me like the contract ends after this year. Now, I could be reading into what he's saying, and he's got one more year after that. I don't know. We don't know the terms. But it sure seems to me like Brooks isn't trying to give the biggest endorsement to Live in the world. He somewhat nihilistic in that way, but I get the sense that the players that came to Live Golf for different reasons that weren't solely I want the money, but where I want the money because I want, in Bryson's case, I want the money because I want to do something for business and be rich. For Brooks's reason, I thought my career was over. I wanted the money before I stopped the opportunity to earn. Well, turns out that's not the case. So they have reasons to kind of step back from it. And it's a market-making thing, right? I mean, they're two of the biggest stars they've got. If they lose them, the product's dead because no one's going to come watch John Rahm and Tyrrell Hatton beat the snot out of 52 other guys. Sergio Garcia is playing great, by the way. But you get what I'm saying, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how this looks moving forward. I think LIV is at this inflection point where they want to keep moving forward. It's clear they want to keep moving forward. And that's the reason why there's no agreement yet with the PGA Tour, because they think what they've got is so invaluable, so important, so game-changing to golf that just no one's quite realized it yet. But once they do, man, oh man, that $5 billion we spent is going to be worth $50 billion, and we're going to make some serious coin. And they want to keep that value attached to their product as they try to negotiate with the PGA Tour, and I guess Donald Trump to a degree. And the PGA Tour is just saying, look, we just don't see it. We give you a pity valuation of $500 million, and you can take it or leave it. And they want to leave it. And then they've got to figure out if that deal isn't done, and the ratings for the PGA Tour have come off their nadir from last year, then where do they position themselves? How do they spend their money? What do they do to try to retain, regain, earn relevancy? Those are serious questions I think are hard to answer. And all of these kind of different disparate data points and comments are interesting context for all that. Final thing to end the show today, just a couple of seconds on the sixth hole at TPC Sawgrass, the Player Stadium course. Davis Love III has been retained, his firm. By the way, Davis Love III is a fantastic golf course architect. I've played some of his work in Alabama and Virginia. It's very good. He does a very good job. He's a very thoughtful guy as a player, as a human being, also as an architect. So he was retained by the PGA Tour and his firm to make some changes, some renovations that are going to continue after this week to the Player Stadium course. But one of the first things they wanted to do was to kind of set the tone for a somewhat of a restoration of the shot values of the course. They expanded the scorecard by 77 yards. They moved some of the tees on the par fives to make them a little bit harder and kind of bring back some of the original shot values. And then went to 6 and said, hey, remember that tree used to overhang over the tee box that we got rid of 10 years ago? We want it back. And they went and found, the tour did a great job producing this kind of 10-minute video about the tree, about the shot value, and about also trying to find a tree that would be a suitable replant, right? Because you can't just go find any tree. It has to be native. It has to have the kind of crooked hook over it like the old tree did. It's got to get in your head. And the story to find that tree and then put it in a root ball and move it 100 yards, this 500,000-pound tree, into the new spot that it now occupies. And then the kind of, I wouldn't say backlash, but the response from the players of having it back and having to contend with it. Because for a lot of them, especially the younger guys, it was never there, right? The tree had long been gone. And even when the tree was still there toward the beginning of the 2010s, it was bare. It had kind of grown in a weird way. It wasn't a compelling factor of the whole. And now they've tried to restore that to a degree. But they've done it in such a way that it's really all in your brain. You can pretty much hit whatever shot you got to hit as a professional, and you're going to avoid it with 95% accuracy for these guys. And yet there still seems to be this kind of return to controversy about it, even though players are so good, they're not going to hit it. The odds of them, no one hit it yesterday. No one will probably hit it today. And once you get to the weekend, I'm pretty certain no one's going to hit it. It's just a visual cue, right? So that just get in your brain and make you think about it. What is otherwise a pretty straight shot down the fairway on a 400-yard hole. And it went from being one of the easiest holes, the easiest ever played, to being the second hardest hole yesterday. And that is enough to get in their brain and make it interesting. That's the point of it. And I know that there are people on both sides of this who go, it's a horrible idea. Why would you do this? Why would you name this hole this way? And people are like, yeah, bring back the shot value, do something weird. I'm more toward the do something weird. This is an interesting tournament. It's a one-of-a-kind course. It's a unicorn of a golf course. Truly a place where any kind of player can win, but you've got to have it to be able to win. Whatever your game is, you've got to have all of it to be able to win. And being able to shape the ball left and right, up and down is a critical part of this test. So being able to shape the ball around this thing that you're probably not going to hit anyway, but being able to do so without messing with your game and messing with your brain, that's part of the test. That's why that tree belongs. That's why it's a good idea. I'm glad that they brought it back. I'm glad that Davis Love, a guy who multiple times advocated for that tree to be cut down, Tim Fincham, decided it was right to bring it back. That's going to do it for us today and for the week on 2 Out the First. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Catch us on Golf News Net TV, now available on Zeem, Freecast, Free Live Sports, and on Roku through the Golf News Net TV app. Android or Amazon Fire app coming soon. We'll give you the cue on when that's available as well. Also listen to us as a podcast. Catch us on your favorite podcast platform of choice. You can also find us on YouTube with both video versions of the shows and audio versions of the shows. Audio channel only is Golf News Net Radio. So if you just want to listen to the show and use YouTube for podcasting, you can catch us there as well. Back with another slate of shows next week. Also, be sure to check out the 19th Hole Golf Show. Kieran Von Wick, who finished in the top 10 at the Puerto Rico Open, became the first AM to win on the APGA Tour just a few months back. He was my guest to talk about his crazy run so far in 2025. I think you'll enjoy the conversation with him. We've got lots of really awesome interviews coming out next week on the channels and our podcasts over at Golf News Net Radio. I'm Ryan Ballengee. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. We will see you next week. Only two at the first. Enjoy the players this weekend.